Now we will start our second day of the conference, so please take your seats. In the meanwhile, I can give you a small Finnish lesson for today. So now after the dinner, when we know each other better, we can be more, not so formal, as we always are very formal. So when you meet the person, you can say moi, and when you leave, you can say moi moi. So that's your Finnish lesson for today. Hopefully you enjoyed yesterday's dinner and dance. It was great as always. And we have very, very interesting topic for you for the morning session. It's about creating a culture of creativity in support services. And I welcome Timothy Ghilain from EASPD and Gregory Wellems from Keystone. Welcome.
Thank you. Oh, thank you.
So we just learned moi.
Moi. Moi. Moi. Thank you for the lesson.
Now, will we remember at the end to say moi moi? We'll have to.
I will. Yeah,
we'll try.
I agree.
So, good morning. Good morning, Greg.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for joining us, all the way from the US. It's been a long trip.
Yes.
So, thank you very much for you and your team to join us. And like the gentleman were doing, I'm not reading my social media. I am making sure I don't mispronounce any of the names. So you've been working for 30 years already for Keystone.
Yeah, I've been in the business for a while, and I've joined Keystone a little bit over 5 years ago. I worked in the state of Colorado and joined Keystone about, as I said, 5 years ago. You heard a little bit about Keystone from Ludmila yesterday. Our organization started 50 years ago, and as a non-governmental organization, primarily, as many of you started, with supporting people to liberate people out of institutions. Over the years, our business has expanded, our services have expanded. We now provide services for pervasive mental health. We have an early Head Start program, which is for education, for introductory education for kids. And we have a service dog program as well, along with adult autism services. Over the years, as we've expanded, we started in the state of Pennsylvania. Keystone has expanded into Delaware, New Jersey, and Connecticut. About 25 years ago, we started our NGO work in Moldova, and 8 years ago or so, started supporting people in India.
Worldwide.
Yes.
That will be a very interesting point to come back to. But Petra mentioned a culture of curiosity. What does that mean? How did that develop? You have a framework for that?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I was really intrigued yesterday by a lot of the discussions about social innovation and a culture of innovation. And that's very difficult for me to understand, because I'd have difficulty going to a group and say, be innovative. I challenge you all, if you went to your group right now and said, be innovative, what would they'd look at you and say, okay, well, how do we do that? How do we do that? So a number of years ago, getting together with my team, our teams together at Keystone, we were looking at where do we want to be and what kind of services, how do we progress and how do we support people with a mission. The mission of Keystone is that individuals will be valued and contributing members of their community. So to be valued and contributing, what does that mean? That's a social role valorization. That's fundamental to what Keystone does and the services that we provide. So over time, we started to break down what's necessary and what kind of, how do you want people to describe your culture and how do you move towards what do you want your employees, your stakeholders, your families, individuals that choose to accept services through Keystone, how would you like that to look? And so one of the areas that we finally got to over conversations and discussions is we wanted to question the work that we do. We wanted to question ourselves of how do we get better. We wanted to question our stakeholders of what do you need what do you need from us to be a better service provider. We wanted to question our partners at government of How do we help transform a system that is in the States, basically 40 years old and is based upon a medical model that hasn't really moved or progressed or really helped people with lived experiences become more independent, and we have a bunch of data on this as well. And so we really broke it down to, let's start developing this culture of curiosity where we ask questions, where we constantly try to improve what we do. And when you look at a person-centered approach too, basically that's at an individual level. So for an organization like Keystone, we have 3,000 individual teams that are working together across 4 states. And so
how do you develop that culture then? How do you,
yeah,
it can't be imposing. Now you have that culture. So
no.
How did that develop, and what step did you take?
Yeah, there's some, for me, there's some things that you have to do structurally and from a framework. We heard from Kirsty yesterday talk about not only do you have to have a bottom-up this culture of innovation, you also have to have some top-down strategies that support that, and these two have to come together in developing what is a culture of curiosity. So for us, the framework, first of all, establishes with an organizational vision. So if you read Keystone, I mean, and this is fundamental across all of Keystone, is we want to partner with families, we want to partner with government organizations to be innovative and to provide innovative services that really fundamentally change that help people become valued and contributing members of their community. So it starts off with a vision statement. And then from an organizational structure, you start to really break down, if this is your vision, how do you get there? And for us, it really involves three fundamental things. You know, first of all, you have to have the passion. You have to focus on how do your stakeholders and your employees and those that are throughout Keystone, you have to have a passion for that work. And that comes from your mission statement. That's why people come to work for your organizations all across. This is our mission. This is what we do. The second part of that element is that, you know, when you have a passion and you put in work, what does it result in? And this is the person-centered planning aspect of what we do. Everybody that comes to work wants to make a difference in people's lives, you know, and they feel good about that. And that's reinforcing that sort of person-centered approach of having an impact on an individual's life and being part of that team and working together. And the third fundamental part of that is what makes your organization unique. And when those three come together, and this is, you know, if you've ever read some of, there was a book written 25 years ago by Jim Collins. It's called Good to Great. And he analyzed organizations across the spectrum. These were for-profit organizations, businesses. And what he found out that when you have this intersection of these three ideas of passion and what drives your, for businesses, the resources, the economic industry, and then what do they want to be best in the world at? When you have those three that come together at a point, that's what makes a company great. And he then wrote a small vignette on basically NGOs and does this apply to NGOs? And he found out that it does. And this is kind of where Keystone tries to live, is this element of passion, of person-centeredness, and then of providing these innovative services. And at that Venn diagram of that center approach is where you start to get the structure of okay, this helps provide the organizational framework for creating that culture, of innovation, this culture of curiosity, and what we're trying to ask questions to always stay in that center of these three pivotal intersections. I think the other part that happens within that then is there are elements that support that process. I think organizations have to be excellent at change management, understanding what change management means. There are, you read a little bit around change management, and you're starting to get the nerd in me that comes out here. So I'll go on a little bit about this, where there's, how do you help an organization move forward, and what are the elements of communication and finding champions and developing pilots that help initially transform an organization through change. And part of that is this initial stage, and then this, how do you, when you have change, how do you make that, how do you evolve that throughout the whole organization? How do you then measure and base it upon outcomes, so you can demonstrate that the change was effective? And so these elements that then say, well, we have this core design of what we want to be. How do we change this organization so we stay at this center point of passion, of outcome-based, and of innovative practice? And then these measurements of what we put into place, all the way down to the fundamental person-centered support level.
That's the vision?
That's the vision.
The staff, how do you get them on board?
So on that level, we talked a little bit about champions and creating champions, but one of the intriguing things yesterday was the conversation about this always has to be ground up in a person-centered approach. So for us, the tools that we use to help that, we have a tool across the organization that we use, at least on the state side of it's called Life Course Frameworks. It's a tool that was developed by individuals and families as a tool for person-centered planning. And what it does is it basically guides the person-centered plan through various kind of domains of employment, of daily living, of rights, etc. And we have, what we've tried to do then is, in coordination with that tool, put in questions. So for example, I'll go, one of the things we've promoted at Keystone is use of technology, assistive and adaptive and enabling technologies. So when we're having a person-centered plan and making a plan for someone around employment or with somebody around employment and their families, we seed that whole discussion with, well, would a assistive technology support you in that? So for example, if you need support getting to work, is there a ride app? Is there some kind of application that we can help you get that will help you get to work consistently? While you're at work, does the person need help with maybe prompts or structures or just timers to say, or needs to know a daily activity list, tools that we all use, mainstream tools that we all use every day? So we seed the person-centered plan. We put in these questions throughout the plan that encourages the adoption of technology. It's still about employment, but how do we effectively support you in that? And we do that, we constantly build upon this tool to ask questions. For me, innovation comes through association. You start, when we talked about innovation yesterday, I love the keynote speaker yesterday because he talked a little bit about music, and if
your time is up.
My tone. There's my one tone. Maybe I'm too close. I don't know. I'll try that. Nope. Am I good? Yep. All right. So we talked a little bit. There we go. I'm back. So he talked a little bit about music, and if you read my bio, I have a music background and a music degree. And I was thinking about creativity yesterday and the culture of creativity and innovation. And innovation in music is always built upon previous innovation. It's built upon, the great composer Sibelius. There's my Finnish reference today. He learned from music of Beethoven and his contemporaries of Bruckner and other things like that. Jazz came from the spirituals of spiritual music through the religious structure, and rock came from the foundations of jazz. So these were all built. New social innovation comes from experiences of others. And the great thing about sort of seeding these questions and team dynamics and diversity and inclusion and equity and all this kind of things that we face today is these seed innovation because you're associating differently with different people and you're talking about it. And when we add questions, simple questions like in a person-centered plan that talk about technology, that leads to other questions that we haven't thought of yet. And so the team is off and they're doing innovative practices or trying new things all the time. And And so that kind of culture of curiosity breeds more questions, it breeds, which then leads to different innovative topics and I think innovative supports.
Yeah, and we heard yesterday, based on the decision of Keveloche, that the social innovation was coming from the ground up. It had to be based on the user's also desires and choice and control. And so here it is with the person-centered planning really organically included that there's no top-down plan on how to provide the service.
No,
but it reacts to the need.
Yeah, you still have to have a tactical and strategic vision. You still have to, from a top down, you have to provide that, here's where we want to be. I mean, when you take a road trip, you don't, I mean, maybe some of you do, I don't know. Maybe you just say, I'm going to go somewhere, but if you just start driving, you don't know where you're going. I think that you have to have a kind of a vision, and so that top-down approach provides the vision, but how you get there, it always has to come, it's not going to be effective unless it's person-centered. I don't care what we try to do, unless it involves the person that's accepting services. We're just, you know, we've learned from that in the past. That's not effective.
And it's the same you were saying with assistive technology.
Right.
It is not, well, we have that beautiful technology, let's use it.
Yeah.
But it's what's relevant.
So I made a mistake years ago. I think I've been in the States. I've been working trying to come up with creative uses of technology for years. You know, back 15 years ago, built a smart homes in Colorado. And I learned a very important lesson and a very, very expensive lesson at the time. These were $1.5 million homes, and I put in $700,000 in technology in these homes. I made it about the technology. And it was a spectacular failure. It was just spectacular. I mean, I could not have, unfortunately, I had to learn that lesson the hard way. If you make it about the technology and not about the person, like I could give you the most beautiful piece of technology, and if you don't know how to use it, it's going to become a doorstop in a minute. It's not going to be effective.
And maybe briefly, all this technology, how is it funded?
So we've been very fortunate at Keystone the last few years with this kind of organizational approach and taking outcomes of what we're trying to do. We've been able to use raise some private funds that have really helped seed this development. In the States, we're also starting to see movement on some of our funding streams that are supporting the use of technology and putting it in that you're able to, if you can build it into an individual's plan, they will fund it. That's still not pervasive throughout the States. It still faces challenges, but we've been very fortunate at Keystone that we found that organizations are wanting to invest in Keystone to help provide necessary technology to close some of that digital divide. I think it's very attractive to businesses that have a social purpose and a social value to fund technology. I think it's one of those things that is probably more available than we think.
Yeah. Good tip to look into. Of course, I think it's probably easier in the US. There's a lot of this culture, but it's worth looking into.
Yes.
You said that you made a bit of a failure with the house. With innovation, there's always the risk involved.
Yeah.
You cannot be sure that the innovation will work. And in the social field, if you lose $1.5 million, that's a bit of an issue.
Yeah.
So how do you approach risk when you look at social innovation?
Yeah, you have to, I think we heard yesterday too, you have to be comfortable with risk. There are some organizational behaviors that we have to be comfortable with. We have to be comfortable. We have to have trust. You have to have trust that you know, when you put something out, your teams will work towards that. You can set up some tools, obviously, to support them and ensure that. But you have to be comfortable with risk. When we start services in India. We're not, this is 8 years ago. We don't know what we're going to end up with. You know, Ludmila constantly is evolving and working the services in Moldova, and there's always, you know, all of a sudden you have a war next door in Ukraine, and you have to transform your services and be innovative and flexible and become almost a social relief organization overnight for supporting people. These are things that involve risk as an organization and involve, well, not only high-level discussions, but also discussions at a local level as well. And so you have to have some organizational behaviors within your leadership that is thinking this out. Now, that said, I'm a firm believer that you have to still make sure you have a tactical overview and that it aligns with your vision and mission. I think one of the things we tend to, at least in the States, we tend to happen is we chase things a little bit too much. Like we'll chase funding over here. Oh, there's a new service. And so this I think there's some discipline involved in the organization. There's trust, there's risk, but you still have to have a disciplined approach that says, if we're going to do this, let's establish some parameters. How do we ensure that this is successful? And how do we maybe monitor to know that it is successful and measure it on a successful outcome?
Yes, we're talking about measuring and having precise data to have a good strategy is very important.
I agree.
But you did mention Moldova, India.
Yeah.
We also heard yesterday that social innovation is very local. It depends on what the local users want, what the staff can do, the legislation.
Sure.
And Ludmila said, yes, what Keystone US does, we don't want to hear about it. We don't do that here. Sorry to put you on the stand. But then you also open up in India for 8 years and it's very successful in Moldova. We heard that they are a very good model.
Yeah.
That contradicts what we said yesterday. How can you have this social innovation in several countries?
Well, and so Ludmila was absolutely right. You know, she works around with what works in Moldova. If we said we're going to put in the systems that work in the States and Moldova, this would be like a smart home for me. It would be a spectacular failure because it's not what works there. They're a different model. They're a different funding stream. They work in partnership differently with governments than we do in the States. But let's take example of India. If you followed India, India is a bit of a challenging situation in the last several years. There is a nationalistic government that's been in place since 2015. Being an INGO can be challenging in India lately. They've put up some structures around funding and organization that they're very conscious of what foreign dollars are coming into the country. And working in that environment, you have to work with local partners. So we're fortunate to work with the Rural India Trust over their wrist and as one of the partners. But innovation at that level is they're just starting their de-institutional journey. So, you know, for us working with partners on bringing 8 women out of an institution for the first time in the country's history is tremendous success and a congratulations to that team. But what's involved in that is really some things that we've learned or that team has learned from steps we made or mistakes or things we were successful in the US of better educating the community, involving multiple stakeholders, working with institutional staff and helping helping educate them, introducing planning communication techniques that have evolved over the years to help the women that have moved out gain successful employment or become more involved in the community. And there's other innovative avenues that we've learned. There's so many dialects in India that a person can walk into a new community and not speak the language and end up in an institution because they don't understand that person. So one of the more successful endeavors that we've had is around family reunification. and working with the communities, the structures, and Genevieve Fitzgibbon's team has been tremendous at this, of identifying that this is a real need in the community. You have family members that don't know what happened to their loved ones 30 years ago, or 10 years ago, and so they're just gone. And so this has been a tremendous success for them, and something innovative in that culture of, hey, we can do this, we can figure it out. This is just a communication and dialect issue that we can overcome.
So when you were looking at transferability, it's not transferability of the innovation, but more of the culture, culture of curiosity and the approach to the situation.
Yeah. So, and also the fundamental core of valuing social roles. I mean, those values that underlie all of Keystone staff, everybody that comes involved people are valued and contributing members. They have a social role that we need to change. They come from a devalued perspective, and we have to change that. And that has been fundamental. That forms a basis of everything that we do and helps contribute to that culture of, if this is where if we want to support this mission of this, we'll come up with localized initiatives that support that outcome.
Yeah. And you're talking also of staff. When we see one of the issue of our staff is also the reskilling we use of assistive technology, especially if it depends on the individual, or if you're going in other countries. I imagine that each time you need to retrain. How is that approached? How skilled is your staff? What the profile of your staff usually?
So I can't speak too much about our work internationally with that. I can talk about my experiences in the States with staff and assistive technology. We have found that, I'll go back to my spectacular failures. When we make it about the technology and specialized technology and, RFID, and we were developing our own software and our own prompting systems. We're not a software company. We should have never done that. But over time, as technology has become more pervasive, we're finding that as staff come in, they have already a fundamental understanding of how most things work. They've worked with smartphones and apps, and part of our culture now is when you apply for a job in the States at Keystone, you have to apply online. You have to demonstrate some basic skills that says, okay, so most of our systems are now online. They're what we do. So that kind of is throughout that process. We try to make it as easy as possible for the support professional to work with the tools that we have. But if you make technology difficult, whenever you put in a piece of technology and it has to be fundamentally designed and easier than what the replacement activity, it has to be easier than what currently exists. Otherwise, it'll be, as I've learned, a spectacular failure. You have to design your tools. You have to find technology that works for the individual, or the individual can operate. And then that also encourages the staff to also learn those tools. So we've had very little trouble in the assistive technology, very little issues. It's been the exception where we need to support a staff member to learn the technology that we use. That's the purpose of that. And I heard this yesterday of the mainstream, kind of bringing in mainstream technologies into our services.
Yeah. That might probably depend on countries, the situation, age of staff, but I think looking at the indeed accessibility of the technology, not just for the users but for the staff, and how easy to use it can be the key element. If it's the smartphone, easy.
Yeah, so for example, we introduced a medication administration program. This is just a tool that we use to monitor, to ensure that we're giving medications in a timely basis. So if you look at the old school method of paper, where you would look through and it would take You flip through pages and, you know, we have 3 people living in a home. There's 3 pages of meds or something like that. You know, it's 9 pages 3 times a day. They're checking boxes, they're doing this. You know, the tool that comes in is something that is a time-based prompt that manages workflow. You see the med, it's much like a hospital situation. Oh, Greg needs his medication at 8 o'clock. He needs these 3 meds. Tim needs his 3 meds at 8:15. These things are done. It's done online. The staff member aren't flipping back through pages. Me being me, I do a data analysis to say how our staff satisfied with this. And secondly, has it become a more effective and efficient use of tools? So that's what we did. And we find out, number one, staff are very satisfied with it. They like the tool. It's easy to use. And 2, we're saving, the med time becomes 26% more efficient. So stuff like that.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Maybe a question that we can't go in detail, but just a nudge for the people to afterwards come ask you questions. We see in your bio that you also work on alternative payment.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so I was intrigued yesterday. I talked to Tim a little bit about this because of there was some conversation around funding and how do you fund innovation. And so I'd like to share with the group, since you work in multiple areas, one of the conversations that's going on right now in the States is how do you incentivize providers to be more innovative? And that's talking about alternate payment models. So right now in the States, you know, if you receive funding for services, basically if you provide the service, you get paid for that service. If an individual has more challenges, then you might get more money to support that person. And if you think about that, and if the person becomes more independent and requires less services, then they would get less money. So that's not really a good incentive for providers to help introduce independence across that. So what they're trying to talk about is a concept called value-based payments, where if, you know, you help someone use technology to become more independent, move from a 24-hour care environment to one where they're maybe living in an apartment, where they're more independent, or that you help them get them a job and they require less services because they have natural supports in their job, then rather than taking money away from the provider, there's an incentive to keep some of that money in the provider to continue to encourage them to be innovative, to continue to support people on a more, to help reach their goals, their ambitions, and their dreams.
Yeah. I think the forms of payment are being discussed in many countries in Europe, so it will be interesting to see how that works and to have some exchanges. I think we have 5 minutes left, so maybe some other people would like to join the conversation.
You were all late dancing last night.
No, they are still sleeping. Not enough coffee in the morning.
I appreciate that.
My apologies.
Yeah.
Hello, good morning. I think can be easy from the leading of one organization or the management introduce the culture of innovation, but the question is to involve the basic staff that are closer to the people that receive the service. Mm-hmm. And this is my question: how do you deal with this complex? Because normally this basic staff has less incentives to do something different than expected, that is in the contract, that is in what the people expect from them, but also are the most important people, because human services are made by humans. How to involve this basic staff in the culture of innovation, creativity, do something different, because innovation without risk doesn't exist.
Right.
But you must feel safe when you do something innovative.
Right.
And this is my question.
Sure. So this gets into the concept of change management a little bit, of if you're changing a culture and you want that, what are the tools that you have to put in place? So I can't enforce the idea of you have to find champions and have them peer support each other. So we find champions that come out and they'll talk to their peers, both from individuals that are accepting services. I've had people come in that accept services come and present to my leadership group. They come and present to our board of directors. They come and talk about their experiences. I have direct support professionals is the term we use in the States, support staff that we bring forward to tell us their stories, and we reinforce them and give them that presence. We also, when we find these gems, we bring them to other areas across the company to say, you're a champion here, and build other champions. So we use this model of finding champions, reinforcing that champion, using communication tools, promoting their work of what they do, constantly reinforcing their work, and communicating that out as this is an exceptional behavior, that this is the kind of thing that we want to work. And we have problem areas. I'm not saying we're perfect in other area. I have a region that I think there's something in the water. I just can't get it to kind of change. But we're bringing people in all the time of trying to set up communication channels to highlight work that's going on. In order to create behavioral momentum, and I'm a behaviorist at heart, so you'll hear that in my kind of talk of organizational behavior and finding, you have to find the opportunity to reinforce something that then promotes that, again, opportunity for that to continue. So you have to continue to find those opportunities. And sometimes it can just be having a meeting. We do a lot of skip level meetings across the organization where we're like, hey, let's talk about this in the home. What are you experiencing? Talking about it. Well, have you tried this? And encouraging that opportunity, and continuing to try to make those changes either through performance management systems and or classic organizational management systems.
Thank you very much. Is there a further question now that the ice has been broken? Now, if you were to give one recommendation, one tip for an organization that want to maybe embrace a culture of curiosity or develop further social innovation in Europe, what would it be?
So when we talk about the person-centered planning, I would say what's the framework that you put in place that is throughout your organization that helps encourage that? So I'm sure you have a person-centered plan framework that every organization has. Can you put in guiding questions or things that from an organization level encourage the adoption of technology or encourage employment or encourage whatever you want to be best in the world at, as Jim Collins would say, what differentiates your organization, or how do you want to differentiate that? Because that differentiation is also a point of pride for employees. They say, oh, our family involvement, what we do around employment or what we do with technology. I've heard some great examples over the last day or so of organizations that are really highlighting their work in those areas. So for me, having that organizational discipline to say, this is what we want to be at, and then from a person-centered planning, how do we put in elements that support that kind of concept?
Yeah. Giving a passion, a vision.
Yep.
Then we can do it.
Yes, sir.
No other question? Greg, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you all.
And I'm very proud. Moi moi. Thank you.
There were so many interesting elements, and I think that yesterday we talked also about that we don't have perfect systems, but we need to be curious. And if somebody says that the system is perfect, it's probably, it really is not. So to be able to make also mistakes and take risks, that's very important. Few updates from the EASPD staff. We have a printed version of the report of concept of social innovation. It's available in the lobby. And also there is on your badge, there is this scavenger hunt. And we encourage you to take the hunt. So you still have some time to fill it up and return it to the EASPD staff. So next we will have a panel of developing organizational models that facilitate innovation. So very good continuation to the previous panel. And Miguel from Buitrago from EASPD is coming to be the moderator of the panel. And then we will have Duffy from Certitude, Ophir Peleg from Shekulo, Eleonore Ségard from FIRAH, and Marija Trifunovska from United Nations Development Program CEO, North Macedonia. Please welcome.
Ready? Hello everyone, welcome to the third panel of this conference. My name is Miguel Buitrago. I'm the Research and Development Officer at EASPD. I will be moderating this panel entitled Developing Organizational Models that Facilitate Innovation. To put in context, what we will be discussing and reflecting on with our expert is that what can and how can organizations promote innovation from within? We believe that organizations that embrace a culture of innovation among staff members and management inspire passion, commitment, and operate at an advantage and differentiate themselves from others. This panel will present how organizations can facilitate internal innovation through key elements such as leadership, transferability, intrapreneurship, and sustainability. Today with me, we have a great panel of experts. I will ask them kindly to introduce themselves.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Duffy, and I'm the Chief Executive of Certitude. I have the best job in the world, and I know I'm a little bit biased. I've been privileged to be working as Chief Executive of Certitude for 18 years now, and we're a mission-driven organisation supporting people with learning disabilities, adults with autism, and people with mental health needs in London. In terms of kind of size, we have a budget of about 55 million. It was 5 million when I started, so we've managed a lot of change over that time. I've a fabulous team of about 1,200 colleagues, and we support somewhere in the region about 16 to 1,800 people. So it's wonderful to be with you today. Thank you.
Hello, everybody.
So once again, hello everybody. My name is Eleonore Ségard, and I'm very honored to sit in this panel with these wonderful professionals today. And I'm happy to share a French experience, and I'm sure you already guessed the French word, and with my accent. And so I work for the International Foundation of Applied Research on Disability, and our aim is to better the lives of people with disabilities, as I think everybody here. So you could wonder what we do for that. So we try to reduce the gap between research and practice. And as we all know, research and practice are two different words. And in order to link them, we have different missions. And I am working on the innovation part. And I am trying to develop a program to help service providers to transfer their innovations. And I am working in this topic, transfer of innovation, as well as a researcher. And I work in an INSERM unit in France, in the Bordeaux University. And so, of course, during this panel, I will be very happy to share with you things we learned or we are learning on that topic of transfer of innovation. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Marija Trifunovska, and I come from United Nations Development Program, which I work as a part of the Inclusive Prosperity Unit as a specialist for inclusion of persons with disabilities and support inclusion of other vulnerable groups. So most of my work is support to implementation of UNCRPD, and also as a country office, we are supporting the government towards developing new policies. Especially our unit works in the support to development of the policies for social care and assistance, social protection, support for employment, and also linking and finding ways how to support partnerships to be developed between the organizations of persons with disabilities with the government institutions toward promoting inclusion, development of social services, and especially developing of care economy and social economy in our country, because we are new in this process. We have started the process of the institutionalization in the second wave in 2018. So since then, we are working intensively on developing of social services, different kind of social services towards addressing the needs and the wishes of persons that are in need for this kind of services. Thank you.
Good morning. Don't be afraid to see me. No war talks this morning. So my name is Ophir Peleg. I'm the Chief Global Officer of Shekulo Group. We are an Israeli-based organization, but also active overseas in some countries. We help almost 8,000 people with complex disabilities, most of them mental and psychosocial disabilities. We have two major divisions. One of them is leisure and community independence, where we help people to consume social and leisure activity independently. And the other is employment services. We receive people that was previously diverted into daycare and sheltered employment, and we train them and we focus on transition to open labor market. Both of our divisions has been awarded the Innovation Award of the EASPD and Zero Project, and we are very proud, but constantly dissatisfied by what we do, and I'll speak about why we are dissatisfied afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Just to remind you that first we're going to have a little discussion, and then we will open for questions with our speakers. So I would like to start with Aisling. Why is leadership important to drive innovation, and how do you do it?
Thank you. I mean, clearly, as we have learned over the last couple of days and probably knew before, there are no silver bullets to seeding and cultivating innovation. But leadership is an incredibly important part of the approach that we can take that can make the biggest difference, in my opinion. And there are kind of three elements to that. That I'd like to touch on. The first is building really on what Greg spoke about earlier, which is really around that culture of curiosity, of innovation, being setting your real vision for the future world that the people you're supporting and the colleagues that are working alongside them want to live and work in, and how we inspire that vision as leaders is incredibly important. You know, you will have heard before around that saying, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Well, I think it has it for lunch and dinner as well. You know, the reality is, and actually it's our culture, organizational culture, that will critically enable us to support people to lead the best lives possible. And in Certitude, we have kind of a leadership framework, I suppose, an approach to supporting that more innovative leadership and developing that culture. And there are kind of four pillars, as we describe it, associated with that framework. And the first of those is that we are brave, So this is about really standing up for what's right for the person. So it speaks to all of what we were talking about previously about person-centered planning, really putting people at the heart of what we're about. But it's us as leaders being willing to stand up against what isn't right and to challenge bureaucracies that are actually outdated or may not be helping to deliver the best outcomes for people, and to be willing to do that alongside people we're supporting and alongside our support workers, who ultimately are our most important constituent and stakeholder. They're the people every day who are working alongside people. They're the people who know what will make the biggest difference. So we have to find the ways to actually listen to those support workers. So being brave is the first of those. The second pillar of our framework is love. We talk a lot about love in Certitude because people talk about loving what they do, loving the difference they're making and the people they're working alongside and the families that they're supporting. So, and for us as leaders and for me in my leadership role, love and bravery are sort of two sides of the same coin. It has to really matter and you have to be willing to stand up for what's right. And it's not just sort of sentimental love, it's actually a belief that people have the right to a good life. And then actually I come into this world, the social care world, alongside many of you in this room and certainly colleagues across Certitude, with a fire in my belly to make change happen for people. And our organisations have to facilitate that fire. And often we're the very organisations that dampen that fight that people may have come and joined us in the first place. So I think we have such a role as leaders to build that fire and to really be brave in standing up for what's right. The third element is what we call unconventional, but it could be innovative. And I'm by no means sitting here and saying everything we do in Certitude is innovative and unconventional. Of course, it's not. We're supporting people to do the ordinary things in life. But it's about what Greg touched on also. It's about positive risk taking. It's being willing as an organisation to take risks, but also to support our colleagues to take positive risks with the people that they're supporting, and to know that we've got their back and that there is an approach to risk taking and to setting out our kind of risk appetite that can be understood by people at every level in our organisation. And some of the approaches to that around how we also challenge our hierarchies and give greater trust and autonomy to support workers. A risk-averse approach that holds the power in roles like mine won't deliver the best lives and the innovation that people need for us to support them. And the final bit of our framework is about place, it's about context. So for us, that's London, one of the most diverse and dynamic cities in the world. But we know firsthand the challenges and the wonders of working and living in a city like London. And I think it makes us more tenacious and a bit more of having that fight, but it also requires us to be really diverse and inclusive in our approach. So having diversity and inclusion as centre to your leadership approach and strategy is absolutely fundamental. I think I'd better stop there. I could go on.
No, that's an amazing approach. Thank you so much. I would like to bring that a bit more to the staff level. So I would like to ask Ophir, what is entrepreneurship and how is it relevant to achieving innovation within an organization? How do you bring leadership to the lower level in your organization?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, we are dealing with this a lot, how to ensure our culture, our organizational culture will be innovative I have some very practical, from service provider to service providers, we try to be practical when we give advice to other service providers, but maybe we have to go back to our history, how Shekulo started, because it will give you an example about how we design it within. We actually started as a party, which is a great contradiction for my speech yesterday, but we actually started as a party when our founder, 20 years ago, he used to be my instructor in the Scouts. And he was working part-time in the Scouts and part-time in a hostel for people with psychosocial disabilities. It was then very innovative. It was a house in the community, but they didn't really leave the house. They were sleeping on the first level, maybe doing some leisure activities on the ground floor and doing some basic work on the basement. And then New Year's came. Then he thought, why does everybody go to parties outside, to an open market party, and they just stay inside and maybe do, I don't know what they do. So he called me and other friends and he said, we are going to rent a place in Tel Aviv, a club, and we're going to do a party for people with psychosocial disabilities. And he took me and others with an invitation that he printed, and we went to other housing facilities. And people were looking at us and said, are you out of your mind? How would they get there? How will they take a bus? What happens if they drink? Well, we won't serve alcohol, people with psychosocial disabilities. They were very afraid. Eventually, 400 people came. And I was the young guy, I was probably 21. They were looking at us and said, are you a social worker? I said, no. Are you a psychologist? No. Are you a psychiatrist? I said, no. So who are you? Because these people didn't have the ability to even interact with someone who doesn't have any kind of authority on them. So I want to say we started as a party, and today we are funded by the government to organize almost 12,000 events each year for people with psychosocial disabilities in 35 different centers. And when we try to understand how we want to bring it inside the organization constantly, we want to come with some basic assumption. First of all, is that there is no money in the world that gives you new ideas. Money and budget can actually prevent new ideas from coming. Money can help ideas to become realities, but usually ideas come from the lack of resources. Something is missing. You have lack of something. There is a challenge that you have to solve. Israel doesn't have water, we have to drink, so we need to innovate in order to do desalinization water from the sea, always coming from the lack of something. So we need to stop as service providers to look for external solution for new ideas. It has to come from within. This was our first assumption. The second one is that, you know, we would try to pay 15,000 euros for this big kind of consultation that comes in and do some interviews, and then they go back and they give you 80 pages of a document that no one even uses after they read it. But we understand we have 8,000 service users, we have 600 employees. How can we ensure they will be our strategic consultant constantly? And the third one is to be constant, and the seventh is to understand that innovation, no matter how much we talk about it today, in innovation, entrepreneurship is not the goal, is a tool. It's a tool to achieve an organizational, goal or target. When we ask ourselves, what is our target? Human rights are too vague, mission statements also too vague. We were looking for a number. And from the employment aspect, the number is transition. We want to increase transition rate to open labor market. We have been managed to do it from 1% to 36%, but this is how we measure everything that we do. And entrepreneurship try to serve this number, try to increase this number. So the tip to you will be, look for a number, look for something that you can measure and set it as a goal that entrepreneurship and innovation can serve. And the last one is that where I started is to be constantly proud, in this case by the 36%, but constantly dissatisfied by the 64%. Because if you just sit there and you're not happy and you not celebrate successes, the team will not feel part of the joy. But if you'll be only joyful and you will remind them, listen, what can happen? How can we increase it to 40 to 45%? They wouldn't be part of this change. Yeah, so I will probably stop for now.
Thank you so much. Now, understanding the approaches in Certitude and Shekulo in these two elements, leadership and intrapreneurship, I wonder, considering that we constantly talk about promising practices, innovative practices. Yesterday we had 6 winners of social innovation with incredible practices that we will be showcasing later today in the workshop. I want to ask to Eleonore, how does this innovation contribute to the implementation of the UNCRPD? And
so, as we said yesterday, and as we all know, there is a huge gap between this wonderful international convention and what people with disabilities experience in real life. And innovation, clearly, thanks to innovation, we have made some progress. And the 6 innovations awarded yesterday are great. And of course, they contribute a lot to changing things for people with disabilities. But I think we are all aware that we have to do more than that. And I think the crucial point is that once we have innovation somewhere, we have to share it. Everybody has to use it to benefit from this innovation. So if we want this convention to be European and to act as fast as possible, that's a key point, as fast as possible, we need to transfer innovation from one context to another context. So to your question, how could we speed up the implementation of the convention? My answer is by transferring innovations. And I'd like just to add one more thing on that subject, if you mind. If you are convinced, as I am convinced, that transfer is the key to our collective challenge of implementing the convention, you could wonder why it is almost never done. Well, we have an example here with Ophir, and we had an example this morning about Keystone, but this is not sufficiently done. And we think that there are 2 main problems. The first one is that we are all focused on innovation on its own. But what next? What should we do with that? And so the question is, how could we share it with other organizations, other countries, and so on? And this is where we get to the second problem. We don't know how to transfer innovation. At least we don't know enough how to transfer it. And well, we know what it is not working for transferring innovations. So for transfer, this is not enough to make innovation visible, like on platforms, or this is already a great step, but you have to do more. You have to make it happen. And transfer, the second point, is not a copy-paste operation like on our computer. And we had examples this morning, and I spoke with Ophir, and he has a lot of examples of that as well. Because innovation are highly context dependent. And you have to translate it and to make it fit into the new local conditions. So that's why in our foundation, we are trying to develop an approach on how to propose practical guidance to service providers on how to transfer innovation, to make this process easier.
Yep. Thank you so much. That's very interesting. Yesterday, I was in the workshop of where you were talking about the report. If you're interested to know a little bit more about the work on transfer innovation, you can ask Eleonore and the coffee break.
And I will tell more on the next question.
Yes. No, but there is a report that is very interesting that is to be translated in French to English and so on, but we will continue discussing a bit more. But, now I want to move to Marija. Considering your work in North Macedonia, and what are the challenges to achieve sustainability in service provision? What are the lessons learned so far?
Yes, as I said previously, we have started the process for resettlement of persons that are with disabilities and live in the institutional settings. This is the moment that we have started to think if in order to do this, we need to transform the system. So everything starts with the research and with the analysis. Sometimes we need the documentation, we need facts in order to see our current state and to see whether our support, whether in when and where our investment should be placed in order to fulfill the goals that we are setting, especially when we are living in a society where everything that is new, you can consider it as an innovation. We as an organization, we are supporting the government to support the innovation, to recognize the innovation, to recognize the practices in order to push and to make a systemic change, because we are all talking about the UN Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And when we are talking about the convention, that means that the government, that the society has an obligation to fulfill it. We all signed it, ratified it, but we need to find a way how to implement. Implementation is a very big process. So I will be back at the beginning, at the researches and the findings. We have made several researches to see what kind of quality of life have the persons with disabilities within the institutions, to ask them what they need and what, if they want, or if they live in the community, what kind of support they want to have in order their quality of life to be changed. We faced with the situations in which institutional life for persons with disabilities it was normal. They didn't feel the need of change. We started the process, we involved all the professionals, we involved NGOs that were at this moment working in the support of social innovation, and try to convince the government that we need the social services and that they need to be developed. But the crucial point was that we always need to think about the investments. We need to invest in the human capital. We need to invest, if we want to have good policies and good practices, we need to invest. We can talk about the love, we can talk about the innovation, we can talk about implementation of UN Convention and other conventions, but if we don't invest in the environments to set the setting, to build a culture, we cannot succeed in innovation. We cannot create an environment in which persons with disabilities, persons with mental health issues, persons with psychosocial disabilities and other underrepresented groups can live in the community on equal basis as others. So our investments were, and the government investments were related with setting the system. We come to the conclusion that we don't have professionals that will provide the care and support services. We have, but they weren't enough. We need a new kind of services that we learn about them from foreign experiences, from the countries that have started the processes and development of services previously, and to see what is it that we can use and change and adapt to our current setting, adapt to our society, adapt to and create a new according to the needs of the persons that will live. We were at the beginning of the process. So in cooperation with the Ministry of Labor and Social Policy, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health, and especially Employment Service Agency, something that is very crucial if we want to make the system to work, we start to make changes. We need standards for qualifications. We have one research in which we have gained a complete picture about paid and unpaid work of family members within their families to the persons with disabilities that weren't receiving any kind of services and were living in their biological families. Usually those families were on the poverty line because there were people that were providing care within the families that weren't paid by anyone. So we made an analysis, we see what we need to do. So with the Ministry of Education, we developed the creation vocational standards in order to set the profession, what is to be care and a caregiver, what is to be support and assistant provider to the persons with disabilities or any other persons that are in need. With the Ministry of Labor and Social Policies, we have worked in order to develop a setting, the institutional setting, the rule books according to which the services will be part of the social system. With the Ministry of Health, we worked especially when we talk about the people that need and are dependent of the services for long-term care and support assistance, and especially when we want to talk about the services and the right for education, for everyday life, right to exercise the culture and sport, we need a personal assistant. So personal assistance as a service in our country throughout one of the biggest programs that we are implementing with, in partnership with the Employment Service Agency is the Community Works Program. That is the program that allows municipalities and NGOs and citizens to create different kind of services on local level according to the needs of the people that live in those municipalities. This is important because there is a space that the municipalities and the NGOs and the Organization of Persons with Disability can map the needs of the citizens and to create and develop services according to the local needs of the citizens, aiming life in the community on equal basis as others. So throughout this program, we have started as in 2013, then in 2016 as an innovation, the educational and personal assistance for children and youngsters with disabilities with the condition for them to enter and enroll the mainstream schools. Not to be educated at home because we don't have this kind of formal education, not to live in the institution, but to enroll the mainstream schools. So in 2020, these services were recognized by the Ministry of Education. Now this service is part of the educational system as a school and as a service that is part of the system towards the our conception for inclusive education, because 2 years ago we also have, on our national level, we have transformed the educational system, so the special schools are now transformed into research centers in order to provide the services and to provide the professional support to the mainstream schools so the children with disabilities can go to the regular school. That is one part. So we need to create and to professionalize the services to develop professions with the Ministry of Education, then to find people that want to enroll in this economy, that want to become caregivers. So throughout one of the activities and cooperation with the Employment Service Agency, we have created this measure, part of the care economy, that is second measure for employment that leads to direct employment. We have a very high unemployment rate because of the economic crisis, so we need persons to be employed, to find their job. So care economy, we made it to be attractive for them in order for them to want to be part of this economy. So we developed this active labor market measure that allows the NGOs and to the organizations of persons with disabilities to apply, to be supported, to be granted to develop a different kind of social services on a local level. So in order for them to have, to create employment, they need to find persons that want to work. So for the unemployment persons, we provided free training, certified training by the verified programs in order for them to be on a level that can provide the quality of services. So throughout this activity, when we support the establishment of the care services, the service providers additionally get the support to how to become an entrepreneur. So they have entrepreneurship trainings. When they employed persons that want to be care providers that are certified to provide to be caregivers, we, with support throughout this measure, we are subsidizing 10 months, the payments, the salary of the caregivers in order to make the services sustainable. Prior several years, we only invest in the engagement of the caregivers. So we have caregivers that were trained, that have that were certified to provide these services, but because of lack of salary, because of their, they didn't have an environment in which they can exercise their rights as an employed persons. They didn't have social security, they didn't have health security and insurance, so they leave the country. We invest in the care economy, in the professionals to provide the services, so they left the country because they didn't have a sustainable job. So we create this measure that secures in this moment sustainability to the employment, because from one side we are thinking about the people that are in need for care and support, and we think about their rights, but from the other side, in order to have a sustainable service, we need to invest also in the employment. We need to invest in the persons that are providing the care and support in order to have a sustainable services. Investments need to continue in development of the services, in re-evaluating of the service that is provided, but we need also to monitor the delivering of the services, but also to measure the satisfaction of the end users in this economy. Persons that are receiving the care and assistance services, those are clients. So our clients need to be satisfied of the service that they gain. So this is those are one of the settings in which we are trying to support the service providers, especially the organizations of persons with disability, especially the NGO sector, the civil society, in order to address the needs of the citizens, but also to address the needs and to support the decreasement of the unemployment rate, and to become a partner to the government, because we know with the fact that the institution doesn't have a capacity to provide the services. If they have a capacity, then we are going back to the institutionalization, because it's easier way for the system to work. So we can talk a lot about this. The development of the sustainable model, but from our experience, the main and the crucial thing is investment. Investment in the services, investment in the environment, and investment in human capital. If we invest, then we can have environment in which innovations can be born, in environment in which we will have satisfied clients, and also we can contribute to development of the new approaches, new services, and also we will have an opportunities to link with something that is new, how to use the digital technology in order to decrease the spendings related with the operation, to decrease the operational costs of the services, etc. So the main thing is investment. If we invest in the services, then we will have an opportunity, and we'll walk to the way to have a systemic and policy changes, and also we will have the opportunity to open the eyes of the government to see and to make partnerships with the citizens in order to improve the quality of life of citizens.
Thank you so much. It's very interesting to hear the experience of North Macedonia, how you've been trying to build sustainability and to make services available for more people. I want to go back to some of the reflections that we had yesterday in the first panels and also in one of the workshops about co-production. And I want to link it with leadership. So I want to ask Aisling, how are leadership and co-production interrelated, and how does leadership affect the quality of and the value of a co-production process?
Marija was talking about investment, and one of the most important investments you can make as a leader is in co-production, in authentically supporting and being the greatest ambassador of a co-production culture in your organization, in my experience. And we've been doing co-production in various forms before we ever heard the term co-production. We use a particular methodology that we've developed over the years. We didn't come up with it in the first place. A wonderful woman called Helen Sanderson, I think we have to thank for it. And some of you may know, but if you don't, do look her up. And it's called Working Together for Change. And actually, it's how you really build bottom up what's working well in people's lives. And that's from really good support planning. So the people who are working alongside people know what's working really well in their lives, their support workers, their families, and the individuals themselves. But often people we support may not use the more traditional methods of communication and have profound and multiple learning disabilities. So it's really important that we have developed co-production methodologies where we are listening to the voice and the experience of people who may not be able to contribute in meetings in the kind of more traditional ways that co-production often happens. So Working Together to Change very much looks at what's coming out of people's support plans around what's working well in their lives, what's not working well, and really listening to that and really helping our support colleagues mainly alongside families to help identify those. And then we kind of theme up what's not working, what's working well, and organize a variety of events across organization to work together with people we support, with families and with colleagues on, therefore, what's important for the future. What should be in our plans going forward, and how do we hold each other to account in delivering on those plans? And that's a really important leadership role. You can't just switch co-production on and off when it sort of works for you to know what you want in your strategy or how you're going to deliver something. It has to be part of your culture and how you as a leader are actually authentically supporting co-production. And that's about investing. It's about having budgets that will enable co-production to happen, that make sure people are rewarded and appropriately recognized for the contributions that they're making. The people know the outcomes that you have agreed as a result, and how you will make sure that that becomes part of your circle of kind of feedback and support and communication in your organization. There's also a really important part around knowing when to step back. Leadership isn't just about roles like mine and many of us in this room. Some of the most powerful leaders in Certitude don't have anything like a leadership title, but actually have some of the greatest influence and the greatest, are some of the greatest ambassadors and change agents and all those wonderful titles that they maybe wouldn't even recognize, but it's what they do. And it's how we kind of reward, tap into and support those individuals to really be part of leading change in their area, and knowing that the organization is providing the investment and the support behind that. I think one final thing before I move on is around, I suppose, speaking partly to the earlier comments that I was making and to co-production, there's a real development need in people around kind of coaching and facilitation skills. And I think investing in the kind of skills and capabilities of the people we're supporting, of people with lived experience, and our colleagues is such an important part of developing the kind of future world that we want for future generations and indeed for those we're currently supporting. So that requires, again, a particular openness, a particular style, a particular approach to how you manage your learning and development budgets and how you kind of prioritize investment in the things that actually will make the biggest difference in my view.
Thank you so much. That I think we can relate it a lot with the entrepreneurship approach. And so for Ophir, dealing with entrepreneurship and innovation from within, what would you say are the best ingredients to foster such framework of internal innovation?
Thanks. So I would say our entrepreneurship model is based on 4 elements, right? Top-down, bottom-up, service user approach, and impact measurement approach. If we focus on the top-down, Gregory and Aisling mentioned earlier the issue of trying, right? Or have the courage to try out. I will go even maybe one step further and say praise failures. There is one thing that I want you to take from here is to discuss failures, praise failures, learn from failures, talk with your team about it. Those who visited us, have probably almost a dozen delegation that visited us from the EASPD. We show the hall of failures, the logos of all the things we tried out and didn't succeed. And if you really want to foster innovation from within, your team, your service users know that they can fail and they should fail. And they should learn from the failures. And then you as a management should take these failures and instead of slapping them, learn from that. That will encourage risk-taking and that will encourage also new ideas to come out. In the bottom-up approach, we live in a very, I want to say, diverse country. We have 148 different units in different neighborhoods, different communities. Some of them are very secular and I don't know, it looks like Finland just hot. Others will be like from the ultra-Orthodox Jewish communities or from the Muslim Arabic-speaking communities. So we need to be adaptive and we need to encourage our staff to create solutions to fulfill our vision in a way that suits them and suits the unit. Some of the things that we do to encourage that is, I give you an example of one competition. The best thing you can do with 10,000 euros is not give it to an external consultant. Just make a competition within your team and tell them we are looking for the best new idea. In our case, was a new idea for convincing people with psychosocial disabilities to join vocational rehabilitation journey. Those who didn't want to go to do the repetitive stuff, those who didn't want to do the bookshop that we've already had and was innovative. And then one of our team called Adi, she came up with an idea. She said, we have a lot of innovative community-based, interaction-based units, but they're all in the group settings. And some people doesn't like the group settings. Some people like the individual setting. So she come, we say, let's do a measurement that's called a kind of vocational engagement enterprise that's called Good Dog. And let's do dog walking services for people who are at home or in vacation. We have a service users taking their dog out. It was exponential success. First of all, because many people wanted to join, they like dogs, they like the individual setting. Because of the individual setting, the placement rate was 40% above even our average. And the cost of this is quite cheap, right? You don't need a shop to create the dog walkers. Many of them become then independent dog walkers themselves. So the competition was, if you have the idea, give it to us. We'll choose the best idea as a management. We give you 10,000 euros as an employee and time to fulfill it. And then we help you fulfill it. You'll be amazed by how much ideas are there inside. And the third example would be the service users approach. If the management is open to talk about failures, and if the team is encouraged to raise up new ideas, so they will be with the service users and ask them, what do you want? What do you need? And then the service users will come up with new ideas. We have Israel's third largest book chain. We have 25 bookshops. One of them is operated in Girona by our partners in Group Exit. And this is basically a measurement of secondhand books. Community bring to us book, they receive a voucher of €1, and they can take another used book and take five euros. Mostly people with psychosocial disabilities. One service user had a severe ADHD. It was unable for him to concentrate, to sit. And then he came to, and then he discussed about his vocational rehabilitation plan, and I tell him, he would say, I want to leave, I cannot be here, it's too crowded, it's too close for me. So I said, what do you want to do? And he said, I want to go out, I want to deliver books to people. And she said, all right, we don't have any kind of book delivery, but let's think about it. And then she set him in the Facebook, and he was starting to promote books in the shop, in the Facebook, and he was delivering them to people's homes in the community who wanted it. Because of this idea, today we have a bookshop in a hospital, okay? And then patient in the hospital can order a book and the service users can deliver to them. And because of this idea, we run Israel's largest website on selling books, because we understood people want to have these books delivered to them. So 10 years later, we actually run Israel's largest book chain, and we have our service users the ability to also be trained in digital tools and digital skills, uploading books to the website. So listen to your service user. This idea could have been ended by one professional staff saying, no, we don't have delivery services in Shekulo, right? So imagine how many ideas are stuck there in the kind of infrastructure by people who say to service users no. So how can we stop them from not saying no? So that's, I refer the top-down approach and the bottom-up approach.
It's a very interesting practice, and new the bookstore, very interesting. Just want to go back to Eleonore in terms of transfer. How do we transfer innovation? And what are the elements and tools that enable the environment and encourage the transferability of innovation?
Okay, so we believe that there are three main components for that, and the first one to follow a framework. What should be done, how, with what steps, and what tools, and so on. So you have to understand that transfer is all about knowledge, but don't be confused. It's not academic knowledge. I'm speaking more about experiential knowledge. And the first step is that you have to generate knowledge from the ground on a given context, from lived experience. And the second step is to use this knowledge to translate it on the ground again in a new context. And here we have some methodological challenges that we are trying to cope with research, as I explained yesterday. And so today I chose not to go onto too technical and probably boring details, but I chose to illustrate this with an example. So let's take as an example a child, and I'm sorry, I just realized that it's not really an innovative example, but okay, let's say it will be innovative. So it's a child in a mainstream school, and this child needs the support of a specialized teacher on specific hours. And first, let me show how this intervention, this initiative is dependent on context, because first, timing is key. For example, after a sports session, the child may be not responsive, not receptive to the specialized teacher, or it may depend on the architecture of the school, because the specialized teacher may need a separate room to work with the child, or it could even depend on the support of the director of the school, or it may depend on the law of the country you are in, or I'm sure it may also depend on the weather outside. So you have a lot of contextual factors to deal with. And so if you want to transfer this innovation, well, if you just describe it, it will end like this. Today, a specialized teacher came to visit a deaf child. So this is great just to share about this innovation and to make it visible, but it's absolutely useless to transfer it. And so you may, by this description, you may have missed one of the key mechanisms here, which is, let's say, the collaboration between the two teachers. And in this context, the collaboration happened that way. The specialized teacher visited the child just before lunch. And so it happened that during lunch, he was able to discuss with the main teacher the progress of the child. And if you want to transfer this innovation into another context, you'll have to reproduce the same mechanism, the collaboration between the two professionals, and in a different form, so that it fits with your new context. And maybe in this example, because the teacher of the class is not available at lunchtime, you may replace this with monthly meetings, but you have to reproduce this mechanism in other way. So if it was a very quick example about the hard points here when you want to generate knowledge to transfer innovations. So now we are going to talk about human support in the transfer process. So the second component of our approach, we believe that there should be a person who will be a coordinator, we call it a coordinator of the transfer, and will conduct the transfer. And this person will have 4 main roles. First, an leading role, like a project manager, and who is responsible for the transfer. And second, an operational role. He will participate, contribute to the process of transfer by generating knowledge, collecting information, structuring it. And third, he will have a role of mediator. That's very important to enable reflexivity among stakeholders, because when you will generate knowledge, information, you will go on the ground and listen to people, to every stakeholder. So person with disabilities, professionals, management, every partners, public institutions that are implicated in the process, everybody. And so you have to listen. And we heard this word very much. Listen with your heart. It's a story, it's life that you want to take on. And the last role is the role of facilitator. He will mobilize these stakeholders and put people in touch with each other. So, and for example, remember from the previous example, the deaf child in the mainstream school, the teachers don't know that their informal discussion at lunch is the key. They really don't know that. They do it, but they don't know that. The coordinator is the one that will discover by listening, by being on the field, that this is the key, this is the point. But the coordinators can't do anything on its own, and the third component here is an enabling environment. And we spoke already a lot about that, and you all here have a lot of things to say about that. I will just give some main points. You need a leader, of course, but you understood that. You need motivation and availability of each stakeholder. So of course, people with disabilities, they are key in the process of transfer, but every other stakeholders, and time is another criteria. The length of the process shouldn't be more than 6 to 12 months. It's very important that professionals on the ground, they have to make a supplementary effort during the transfer process. So this is not an endless process. This is not research. This is something very practical, and it has an end, and you have to know when is that end of the project. As usual, money is an issue, and we spoke a lot about that, so I will be very fast. In my small experience, I just want to say that there, at least in France, there is no dedicated funding for that. So you'll have to fight for it and to be innovative and creative to find budgets. And of course, that's my last little point, you need a culture of innovation in your organization, and we heard a lot about that.
Thank you so much. Just very briefly, I would like to know, is there any way to measure the success of a transfer of innovation?
Oh, that's a very good and difficult question. And you have so many ways of measuring it, and it depends on which perspectives you are. But since we think that today, the main challenge in implementing this international convention, we think that the way to measure it should rely on what people with disabilities experience. So we think you have to go there and ask people, okay, what's your experience? Do you like it? How do you receive it? What's wrong? What's fine? And so on. So we think that's the way to evaluate the success of your transfer. But that's a key point as well.
Yep. Thank you so much. Looking at the time, I think we could take a few questions from the participants. Is anyone has a question for one of our speakers? There's a question on the left side.
Hi, thank you for everyone for their remarks. I have a question for Aisling. You mentioned a very significant growth in your organization, I think from 5 million to 55 million. How much of that was down to your values and the implementation of your values in your staff? Is there a relationship, or is it just circumstantial?
Probably a mixture of both, but values are incredibly important at Certitude in every way that we work, in how I lead, in how people experience our organization. And I know this through the kind of feedback and the various engagement surveys that we do directly with our colleagues and with people we support and with our families and wider commissioners. And people talk about coming to an organization where actually we are what we say. There's an authenticity, that the values are evident wherever you go. And that, is a fundamental part. Whenever we win new business, win a new contract as part of our growth, one of the first things that we will do is try and understand the culture and really help to identify and bring our values to life in that place. And we have, one of our values is about continuously improving, and another is about working together. And both of them are really important to the whole way that we provide support and the way we lead, because we are not looking for mavericks in Certitude. We believe that actually everybody has gifts, everyone has talents, everyone has strengths, and actually our role is to facilitate people to be able to work to their strengths, and that's as much for the people that we're supporting through kind of strength-based approaches as it is for our colleagues. And we recently actually just completed an engagement survey with our colleagues, and it was just wonderful, and something like 93% of our colleagues are really proud to work for Certitude. And in anonymous surveys, you don't always get that level of both the level of respondents and the feedback. And just to pick up one of your points, one of the other most encouraging bits of feedback we got was that we're an organization that supports people when they make mistakes, to learn from them, that actually mistakes are okay and they're welcomed, and that's about sort of failure and learning from when things go wrong. We've all screwed up, we have to use that to help us develop and improve, and that speaks to our continuously improving value.
Okay. Is there any other question for our speakers? Nope. Well, I do have some more questions. So while we still have time, I want to go to Ophir now, and same question as for Eleonore. How do you measure entrepreneurship? How do you measure the success?
Yeah, well, I think that measurement and entrepreneurial in itself cannot be measured, but its impact Does, yeah? And then the question is, what do you measure? The only good thing about the war is that my boss is not here, so I can say that he's crazy, stubborn, and a genius on its own. And he had a vision. He came to Shekulo from the business sector. We have 148 units, and he has a vision of having a dashboard. He wanted to go into the office and have a dashboard and do zoom in and do zoom out, and he thinks he's Microsoft sometimes. And then the professional teams, the rehabilitational team, the mental health said, we are no one to be measured. We didn't came to work for Microsoft. We came to work for a social organization. What we do is important. Leave us alone. And this dialogue was ongoing on for like 6 years almost, right? And then we came to realize we want to measure we measure our transition rate. We measure our satisfaction rate, right? But we don't measure enough the impact of the ongoing thing that's happening in the units. There were a lot of discussion in the EASPD about meaningful work in sheltered workshop, and we wanted to measure the meaningful work in our vocational practice. What is the meaning of the thing that we do? And we sat along, and then eventually the rehabilitation team was okay with being measured, because the management there understood that it's not enough to say you're doing a good thing, you're doing a bad thing. Even the team on the ground in each and every shop needs to understand what are the gaps. And we sat together with the service users and sat together with the team and came out with 4 things that they wanted to be measured on. That's diversity of the vocational practice, how diverse is what we do, how is not repetitive versus diverse, how continuous it is, how we don't have a dead times in our training units, in our sheltered workshop, in our daycare, how every hour is meaningful, how relevant what we do to the open labor market, right? And identity and meaning, how does it strengthen the meaning of both service users and team at the unit? And the service improvers go outreach to service users to fill it out. The management fill out with the team. Each character have 25 points. So each unit are now being graded every quarter in an issue between 0 to 100. And we managed to show our staff and our service users the change that needs to be done and the impact of innovation. We actually closed some unit. And for the first time, we had an idea to see where the change needs to be done, where innovation is needed. For example, sometimes it's very simple. It's the lettuce to the coffee shop arrives at 11, and if it would have arrived at 9, there wouldn't be a dead hours, right? Others comes with knowledge. We saw some units like the coffee shop where the team thought it's very relevant, but a service user thought it's not. And we understand they don't know enough. The solution was they don't know enough that there are many coffee shops out there that are looking for employees. So by thinking how you want to measure the impact of the innovation, kind of have the room to say, this is where we are calling for more innovation. This is the gap that we have to fill.
Yep, thank you so much. Since we are approaching the end of the panel, I would like to ask again if you have any questions for our speakers. Otherwise, we continue. So, given the time, we have only 4 minutes left. I would like you to be a bit brief in your answers. This for Marija. Besides ensuring funding, what do you think are the biggest challenges in the way forward to improve the sustainability of services in North Macedonia, and how could EASPD support this process?
When we are talking about when we are talking about the sustainability, investment is the initial stage, but we are talking about the services, and we need someone to use them. We have people, the clients, the potential clients. Something that we need to do is to make the services accessible and available for the clients. They need to be informed about the existence, but also they need to be part of the process. When we are talking about the innovation, we need always to secure the space in order for persons, the clients that will use the services to participate in the creation of the services, but also to participate in the system of making the service sustainable. So participants can also be co-partners in the financing of the services and the existence of the services. So something that we need to work in the future is to see what are the available models of financing of the services in order not to finance only the existence, but also the improvements and the changes. Sometimes one services can fill the purpose at this moment. Maybe the next year we don't have need of certain services, or need to be transformed, or need to be changed. So the EASPD is a association in which many service providers are members. They are sharing knowledge, they are sharing experiences. They come from different countries with different social models. Although we are talking about the European Union, we're talking about the social pillars and other structural aspects of the organization on social service delivery. We are all talking about the human rights approach. We all talk about the person-centered planning. And now when we are talking about the children, something that is introducing, it's also the family-centered planning. I think that the association, the service providers can also share their experience, maybe make partnerships in order to improve the already existing services in the countries, and to create together, to find the ways how to map the needs, how to involve, to find the mechanisms, how to involve the clients, the persons with disabilities, and especially we want to talk a lot about the people with mental health challenges, but in our country they are left behind. Their available services are in the health department, medications, maybe sometimes hospitalizations, but they didn't have any kind of social services that will link them with the society, with the environment, and then will support them to stay, to be active members of the society, etc.
We're glad that EASPD provides, the conference provides a space for exchange, collaboration, and meeting, networking. We have only 1 minute left, so if we have a final remark, very briefly, that we could say, to create a culture of innovation within the organization, what would be your final comment?
Listen. There's lots of expertise in your organization, in the people that you support, the families and your support workers in particular. And that's where the real nuggets and ideas that will flourish and support people to live their best lives. And ultimately, that's the purpose of innovation. It's not about innovation, is it? It's about people living great lives. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I would prefer answer the question Marija had on how EASPD could contribute to transfer. And I think as an organization of service provider, you do already a lot, and we could go much further on this subject of transfer. So that's why I conclude.
Thank you so much.
And also, I just wanted to add, because EASPD is a network. We can see on the website the aspects and the support and development of the EU member states, but also there is an open space for the countries that are not EU members. And I think the partnerships, networking, collaboration, something that we have talked about these 2 days, is something that we can support together, jointly, to be real, to share the experience and to find the innovation in different environments and in different settings.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And by saying again, be proudly dissatisfied.
Thank you so much for being part of the third panel, to all of speakers, and I give the floor back to Petra.
Thank you, Miguel, and all of the panelists for your time and your thoughts.